and welcome to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. Well, the idea of India is one that has been fiercely debated over the years, particularly along religious lines, and especially more so in the last 3-4 years. But there are also some other issues that have crept into our political narrative. Issues that are spawned by the rise of social media, such as, of course, fake news, trolling, the right of privacy over data management. And then again, we are also at a point in time where our country is slowly accepting the idea of Section 377. But at the same time, this is also a point in time where we've been accused that there may be a danger of India turning into a Hindu Pakistan. So how do all these views balance with each other? To debate all these contradictions, I have joining with me on the roundtable Rajesh Mahapatra. He's the editor-at-large at the Hindustan Times. Radhika Ramaseshan, she's a consulting editor with the Business Standard. Kaveri Bamzai, she's consulting editor with India Today. Professor Madhav Nalapat, he's the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Professor Nalapat, I'll begin with you. We've at a point in time in our country where, as I said, we have the very real fear of Hindu national Pakistan coming up, and yet, we're also trying to become more liberal in our outreach by accepting Article 377.
Well, in my view, India can really thrive. It will always survive, but it can thrive only if there is a liberal culture. And the reason for that is the knowledge economy. Now, in India, we didn't do too well in the chemical revolution. We didn't do too well in the mechanical revolution. We are doing extremely well as Indians. I'm not talking about a system or as a country or as a government, but as individuals in the knowledge revolution. For a simple reason that this is a revolution without boundaries. It's a revolution without defined rules. It's a revolution where you have to keep adjusting as you go along. And the Indian mind is very attuned to that kind of, if I may say so, freedom of thought. The problem is the Indian system is not. It's still a very colonial system. It's still a very repressive and regressive system, even after the British have left 70 years ago. And therefore, I'd like to say very clearly that there's no contradiction between being liberal and between being in favor of the idea of India, because India as a country, as a concept, it can thrive only in a culture of liberalism, especially now that the knowledge economy has come, and we really cannot afford to just pass it by the way we passed by the chemical and the mechanical revolution.
Rajesh, how your take on this, the very interesting crux in time that we are in?
Well, there is no one idea of India, and there shouldn't be one idea of India.
I don't know if
there will
some
be,
people
and
agree
there
with
have
you or
to
not.
be, and there will always be many ideas of India, because that's what is the essence of India. It's a subcontinent of diversity. It's a country which is vastly heterogeneous. It's a country where multiple religions thrive. It's a country where there are hundreds of languages that are spoken. Although officially we would tend to dub many of them as dialects, but they are languages. So what Mr. Nalapat said, I quite agree with it, is that we will thrive on a culture of liberalism only. We will thrive on cosmopolitanism only. We cannot be kept hostage, or we should not be kept hostage to one single idea of what India should be. And that, if we try to do that, that will be undoing of India.
But Radhika, some might argue that we need an emotional glue to keep the country together, and BJP will say Hindutva is that emotional glue.
BJP does say that Hindutva is the glue that keeps the country together, but I am certainly dead against the BJP's notion of Hindutva, because it is a tool of political mobilization, and we cannot allow dominant political narratives to shape our idea of India. Sure, in the years after independence, there was this whole Nehruvian socialism, which actually distracted, and in a sense which successfully distracted the country from the aftermath of partition. Imagine this country could have erupted into 1 million mutinies, riots, and so on. That didn't happen because somehow I think the way the narrative was shaped by Nehru, he got the whole country involved in this concept of nation building, dams, universities, and so on, a kind of a forward-looking vision. Now I'm afraid that that becomes regressive, and it's not necessarily only because of the BJP. you have regionalism, you have parochialism, you have these movements against migrants. I mean, when Professor Nalapat talked about knowledge economy, it just implies that there are no barriers. But on the other hand, and you should allow this free integration of languages and societies and other things. But you have Maharashtra, Bombay, which used to be the heart of cosmopolitanism in India, and look at the kind of movements against migrants that have happened in Bombay and Pune. And it's not just that. I mean, I was very disturbed when I went to Karnataka recently. Bangalore, even in cities like Bangalore, there is a kind of a tacit insistence that you should only speak in Kannada and not use any other language. So I find that very disturbing. There is a kind of movement towards narrow-mindedness, if you call it, parochialism, which is extremely disturbing.
Kaveri, your opening thoughts, and also, knowledge economy he spoke about. Because of the rise of social media, is that working as a unifying effect? It should, but it's not.
I want to make two quick points. One, that it's part of a global phenomenon. I think we see this everywhere. There's the movement to make America great again. There's the movement to close borders in France. There's a lot of unhappiness with Merkel's open borders in Germany. So I think there's a global backlash, and there's a global attempt to reshape and reinvent what each nation stands for. And I think in India we see this because we spent 3 years coming up with the idea of India in the Constituent Assembly. And there were some great people who discussed all manner of ideas of India. There were people who even spoke up for alcoholism, rather than prohibition. So you had people discussing all sorts of ideas of India. Now you come to a state where you have two essentially major competitive nationalisms, or two discourses, so to speak. One is, I think, the whole attempt to make India great again, which I call the MEGA Brigade, which is really harking back to the past, rewriting history, reshaping how we as Indians should view ourselves, trying to erase the whole of the Mughal period, reclaiming Taj Mahal, renaming Allahabad, renaming streets. This is a kind of a reshaping and reinventing of our own narrative, our own idea of India. And I think there's the other brigade, which I call the always Nehru Gandhi. India is Nehru Gandhi always, which is the INGA brigade, which believes that.
Are you not sounding like Modi now suddenly?
No, but the fact is that a large part of India did feel disenfranchised, did feel marginalized, did feel sort of mufassilized by this whole idea that Nehruvian India was certainly somewhat of a cosmopolitan elite idea. It was discussed. And the whole idea was that India was allowed to, the constitution is a document that changes all the time. We have so many amendments. We have more than 100 amendments. Correct. So we were allowed the opportunity to change some of the aspects of it. But I think the basic structure of the constitution, which is the fundamental rights, that is something that cannot change. And I think that is what forms the idea of India, which is the right to equality, the right to freedom of speech, the right to life and liberty. I think those three rights are absolutely essential to the idea of India. There will be competing discourses, and let them be. And let them flourish on social media as long as they do not become antisocial. So yeah. I think as long as it does not become a threat to life and liberty, as we had in the case of the Congress spokesperson's minor daughter being threatened with rape, yeah. I think those are terrible things, and that is the kind of polarization I think that has been unleashed by social media, which has tapped into this deep, subversive, feeling that we have been left out of this whole idea of India, the whole narrative of progress and the whole idea of diversity and unity.
Professor, this, she spoke about two divisions within India, and one was, what I think our friend Dr. Swami calls the Lutyens' Delhi crowd that is now feeling a bit left out with this current narrative that is happening. But has it ever been so divisive?
Well, I'd like to say that I have friends in the Jamaat-e-Islami, I got friends in the RSS. They have a very similar point of view, for example, on Valentine's Day. In fact, they have a very similar point of view on several issues.
So there's
of
a fundamental
society.
India and a liberal India.
I mean,
I think all extremes are actually aligned.
well, I'm only saying, I'm not going to call them extreme. They're both good friends
What
of
they
mine.
say the distance between Siberia, Russia and US is actually 20
Well,
miles.
it's no.
Better from the other side.
What I'm trying to say is that maybe the meat is different or whatever, but essentially they have the same kind of concepts. Now, my point is, let's be honest. Why is it that relative to the population of India and Pakistan, there's so many more Pakistanis in the UK than Indians? Because it was so difficult to get an Indian passport in the time of the great exemplar of freedom, Jawaharlal Nehru. It was extremely difficult. It was very bureaucratic. And let's not forget, it was Nehru who introduced curbs on freedom of speech. Then all the curbs on freedom of speech that we're experiencing today, including, if I may say so, that colonial monstrosity called the criminal defamation law, which in my view, it's a disgrace and should not belong to even a semi-democracy, much less our democracy. All this came about during that period. So what happened was that there was an effort to drive a particular idea of India. And unfortunately, what's happening is that the people who are in power now are making the same mistake or deliberately. They're trying to drive their narrative as the idea of India. And as all three of our participants have said, there is no one idea of India. It's a complex country, 1.26 billion people. And if you talk about an idea of India, and you talk about, for example, Muslims being the same, all of them, Hindus being the same, all of them, Christians being the same, I mean, you're talking nonsense. So, so far as social media is concerned, in my view, if you attack social media, and if you try and restrict social media, you're basically hanging a gun for a murder. If somebody uses a gun and shoots somebody, you don't hang the gun. You shouldn't hang anybody, but you should punish the individual. So in my view, social media is part of the apparatus, how it's used, how a knife is used, how any other instrument is used for good or bad. But I think we should ensure a climate in which social media is encouraged, because otherwise, the way we are a pygmy compared to China and the US. We don't have a Yahoo, we don't have a Microsoft, we don't have a Jack Ma. We are still pygmies.
But we have the largest population that uses WhatsApp, by the way.
Well,
so that tells you a lot.
I'm delighted about that. But I'm saying
200 million.
there's a long way to go, and the problems didn't start in 2014. It started in 1947 because too much of the British past was grafted onto the post-colonial period.
But we should be grateful that they gave us a constitution which we can at least debate, that we have a country where at least we have plurality, we have a diversity. And at least we're in a position to argue these things. I think we could have easily gone the way of Pakistan, we could have easily gone the way of Israel and had a monotheistic state. We didn't.
Israel, frankly, I'm not sure Israel is
In fact,
I think they give a lot of...
the early
has a vibrant
50s.
media.
Exactly.
I mean,
It has
I
a
keep
vibrant
checking.
media,
Very
but
vibrant, much more vibrant than our
I think the
media,
Arab
for
population there
instance.
is
Yeah.
frankly
They
much
will agree
freer
with you.
than almost anywhere else.
Yeah.
Or maybe in the United States, but otherwise, Arab population in Israel has got a huge number of freedoms.
As long as they're not exterminated and shot on sight.
No, I think we probably this is not a show where actually we can go back to debate history, and there's a lot out there. I don't see 1947 as a problem. I think it's also another milestone in a long run process. We didn't have the India map. There were many India maps, right? There was a British India map before 1947. There was an India map in 1947. Then there was another India map that evolved over the following years as we kept adding many principal states. But I think today what we are facing, very clearly we can see, from 1947 till the late 80s, we embraced what is called a socialist style economy. There were certain ways our aspirations were defined. There were certain ways our goals were defined. Then come 1990, we threw that out, and then we embraced what is called a market economy approach. And then that sort of gave rise and gave birth to another new set of aspirations, a new set of goals, and a new set of expectations. I think 25 years on, somewhere along the line, those aspirations, those expectations have not come on the promise that they had. Just as the socialist style economy failed to deliver on many things that were promised. I think what is happening today, and it's a matter of concern, I think at a a larger level, we perhaps do not know how do we respond to this. And even a bigger worry is that we do not want to acknowledge that we are actually in a crisis today. We are in a denial. So today, for example, you see what is happening. There is nowhere you can see any sign of hope. The farm sector is in a very bad distress. Look at the manufacturing sector. It is going from bad to worse. We are going around saying, we are growing at 7%. Nobody is sitting up and discussing what is this 7%. If we are growing at 7%, show me the party. Where is the party? And why there is no party? Because we are not growing at 7%. It's the minuscule proportion of corporates which have significantly benefited from GST, which have kind of started doing well at the expense of a large unorganized and informal sector. Our education system
No, I
is in
give you
doldrums.
all you've got the markers that are there, but are these problems that they have inherited or is it of their own making? So that is the other thing that has to be debated.
No, but I'm not talking in terms of who has inherited. See, we will get into this debate and then we will go back to, for everything, then you start blaming Nehru.
That is what about to
What I'm trying to say, let us recognize what the problem is. Is the problem getting from bad to worse? Or is it getting from bad to better? Or good to better?
On that note, we're going to come back. We're going to take a short break, but come back and actually debate, are we getting from bad to worse or is there some hope? Is there a better in here somewhere? So stay with us. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing the idea of India, and before the break, Rajesh spoke about the economic situation that we are in. But Radhika, a bit about the societal stage that we find ourselves in, where we've been talking about whether dissent is encouraged or not, which is again ironic because we have the rise of a very vibrant social media, yet we are seeing the same curbs on freedom of expression that were there in an earlier age.
Yeah, but social media is not getting repressed in any sense, I mean, it
should it get repressed then?
No, it should not.
Okay.
I think Professor Nalapat said that right in the beginning. Let the aberrations, let the deviations, let everything play out. I'm sure it's going to, there are checks and balances within the system, and I'm sure it will level out after a while,
But this fake news menace?
Yes, fake news menace. I mean, we have to look at ways of curbing it. You also have alt news and, I think what the last 4 or 5 years have seen is the growth of an alternate media, which is very, very welcome because mainstream media often encapsulates a particular point of view or a particular perspective. So you have counter checks or you may counter narratives, sorry, not counter checks. I hate to use the word checks, counter narratives. So, so I think on the whole, if there is a particular situation in Kashmir, you're going to get all points of view, thanks to the social media. And therefore, I think social media must be fostered, it must be encouraged, and there shouldn't be any curbs of any sort.
I don't think you can repress social media. I think, you do something, technology will find another way.
No, in any case, I think fake news, there's so much talk about fake news. Fake news is a phenomenon of the polarization. It's a symptom of the polarization of society. It's not the cause. As Professor Nalapat also said, you can't shoot the messenger. It's like blaming the media for all the ills in society.
I would say social media just is a mere platform.
No, but it's also
on which it gets carried.
No, but when we talk in particular about fake news, it's because society is so deeply polarized that you do have rumors which get magnified and amplified through the use of social media. And I think here what all of you are saying is significant because I think I'd like to go back to what Ambedkar said, that he talked about India not being just a political democracy, but a social democracy. And I think that is what is significant. A social democracy means that every minority, no matter how small, even if it's the Jehovah's Witness, who also won that great case, by the way, even a small minority gets the protection of the Constitution, gets the protection of law. And that is the greatness of the idea of India. I think that every minority, no matter how small, ideological, caste, communal gets space, and gets space on social media, gets space in society. That's what our ideal should be.
And unfortunately, we've had two heads of, we had President Pranab Mukherjee, he spoke about the fact that media is not doing his job properly. We have Hamid Ansari, his last speech was that he felt there was a growing sense of insecurity. When, important people in those positions are showing that, doesn't this show that there is something wrong? Forget what the social media chatter is about.
Well, I'd frankly like to say the distance between individuals who are frankly enjoying the benefits of living off the taxpayer, they are in a different kind of human being from the rest of us. There are individuals
Some reason why we chose them for that position.
Frankly, there are individuals who are, big houses, cars, other kind of things. They somehow are different type of people and they have different points of view. And they say a lot for effect because they want to retain the kind of separation from the rest of us that they have now. I simply want to say we're talking about fake news. The entire Western media was talking about Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah.
Where's the fake news?
Yeah.
The entire Western media is painting Kim Jong-un, for example, as some kind of a horrible kind of person in those days. But the Saudi royal family for a long time has been painted as very nice chaps. Today I understand Crown Prince Mohammed is making a difference, but before Crown Prince Mohammed, a lot of people were backing Wahhabism to the hilt.
Yeah.
And the Western media ignored that. So let's be honest, what's fake and what's true is in the eyes of the beholder, and we should leave it to the beholder.
So you said it's a country of different languages, also a country of different narratives, and let all the narratives live so long as they don't harm each other.
Yes, no, but I would like to come back to, fake news. I think we are talking in the context of, I think fake news has always been there.
Yes.
It's just that, the platforms have changed and the amplification levels have changed.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and today why we are so concerned about is the fake news is leading to a lot of social disharmony. We are having these lynchings that are happening. And there's also a reason for that. We are to be blamed. We are a country where a large number of people continue to be illiterate. And they fall for it. People say that Indians are a lot more.
Literacy has nothing to do with belief in fake news. I think some of the most literate people are forwarding.
No. Let me qualify it by saying that uneducated. Okay, in the sense that you fall for things.
But you believe what you want to believe. So maybe it's the mindset rather.
So I always say.
We all live in our personal echo chambers.
I always say Indians, compared to any other civilization, they do not go by logic, facts, as much as they go by how their the sense how their interests are served. That is where the problem lies.
But Priya, I just want to add here. The point is very simple. The point is our low rate of growth and the low rate of economic progress. Let's be honest. We have tens of millions of young people whose talents are being unutilized first by a totally dysfunctional education system. I'll give you an example. Poor peasants sell gold jewelry so their children can study English because you have political parties who say English is bad. You have an individual like Nitish Kumar who's introducing prohibition and sending people to jail and taking over houses because somebody has taken a little bit of alcohol, thinking that is a big issue in society. This kind of frankly crazy hypocrisy that we see in policy in India, that is the reason why people are getting angry. They're getting angry because they're repressed, because they're regressed. And the reason why you don't have revolutions in societies that are liberal is because there are so many outlets for that. And today what's happening is, because of a regressive, repressive kind of approach, and if I may say so, this is common to almost all parties. The Congress party is regressive about some things, the BJP is regressive about other things.
Correct.
The Congress party is repressive about some things, the BJP is repressive about other things. This entire culture of regression and repression is what is leading to the mindset that seizes upon the negative messages of social media. Why we have too many negative messages, we don't have enough positive messages, and the reason is the overall regression, and I'd like to go back to my point, it is caused by the still colonial, legal and administrative system that governs this country, that gives so few rights to the individual citizen and such enormous rights to the state.
But is it just that, or is it also,
I disagree a little with you. I don't think it's just a colonial hangover. I think if you look back from the late 80s, the polity is becoming much more polarized along different lines. You had two defining movements. You had the Ram Janmabhoomi movement and you had Mandal. Remember, Mandal was as polarizing as the other one. It unleashed the worst fears, the worst paranoia among the upper classes and among the upper caste.
Half a minute here.
Quickly,
That Mandal, frankly, after Narasimha Rao introduced reforms and the private sector grew very fast, the fever of Mandal came down very sharply.
I just want to reiterate that in the last 20 years, if you see, between 1994 till 2012, nobody talked about reservation in government sector.
Exactly.
The upper caste was never worried, because there were jobs coming their way. It's only when the jobs started drying up.
No, it's also because parties like whether it's the Lok Janshakti Party or the BSP or Maya, they've all been demanding reservation in the private sector. And yes, I mean, that's very much, they flagged it.
So I think basically what we're saying, the 3 M's change the idea of India: market, mandir, mandal. Right?
Yeah,
I think
now there's an attempt to revise that and reinvent this, keeping these 3 M's in mind. Sorry to go back to acronyms.
Be careful, there is a real estate company by that name.
Yes.
None of the parties have a problem with market. Okay, they've all embraced the market economies, and I mean, notwithstanding the hypocrisy of the left. A mandal also is kind of an article of faith. It is a third thing, mandir or Hindutva,
which unleashes this competitive nationalism.
I know Professor Nalapada will disagree, but we're totally out of time. But at least we've tried and identified some of the problems that are there, some of the good pictures also, but there are some issues that are going to come up when we debate the idea of India. But that's it from us. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again same time next week.